Afternoon and welcome to the Federal Executive Forum, now celebrating 20 years of profiling excellence in government IT mission programs. I'm Luke McCormack. During today's show, we will discuss critical issues facing government and industry leaders with their 5G strategy, technologies, and solutions. With me on today's show are Dr. Tom Rondeau, Principal Director for Future G Wireless Technologies, Department of Defense Research Engineering. Jason Fox, Director of Department of the Navy 5G IPT within the Department of the Navy CIO's office. Amanda Toman, Director of the Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund, and that's with NTIA Department of Commerce. Brian Schramsky, Director Solutions Architect, Mobility, Verizon Business Group. Mike Loomis, Chief Executive Officer, Nokia Federal Solutions. All right, we're talking about 5G, and who better to start us off is Mr. Future G himself. Tom, tell us the state of what's going on over there at the Department of Defense and what you all are focusing your attention on right now as far as a broad spectrum.
Yeah, hey, thanks, and thanks for having me here. We're the Future G office, so we're really looking, forward into the next generation of technology. So we've been coordinating across the department for the last 4 or 5 years now on 5G technologies. We started off kind of really focused just on 5G. We were able to push a significant amount of funding out of the department to help spur on what's going on in the community, in the industry. And then what we'll be getting into throughout the course of this conversation, I want to talk more about what's coming next. That's really what we're focused on, what we're excited about. But to go back to where the department is on 5G, it's come a long way. When 5G first came out, we were all excited about it. We were focused on how to integrate, engage with the kind of commercial industry on how to use these technologies effectively for the department's interests. And so with that, we've talked a lot about the different experiments that we've done across the United States. We've been doing a lot of international work with our combatant commands, the geographic combatant commands around the world, and really started to push the 5G concept and technologies out there. So a couple of things that I wanted to talk about today on what 5G looks like for us. One of the things is a lot of work with joint and interoperability among partner nations and joint force operations. How do we engage with the traditional military communications and tactical networks that we've historically had a significant amount of work on? Issues that deal with the department's challenges when it comes to executing our warfighting and peacekeeping operations, as we are a global force that operates pretty much anywhere you can think of. And so one of those things is, all right, so we've got these partner forces, everybody brings their own radios to the field. How do we make sure that they're working together and interoperating? And what new technologies can we bring to bear? Right, 5G was a great revolution in software-defined networking in a commercial infrastructure and commercial technologies. So we built this thing called the Scalable, Interoperable, Resilient 5G, or SUR 5G program. That's been mostly focused on our work with our NATO allies and how do we make sure that we're providing that joint force operations with that concept of interoperability and take advantage of these new technologies. So when you think about that one, it's if you have 5G infrastructure out there, and then we can add on features to it that allow us to do that kind of military engagement. And so we've built up this construct with our NATO partners where we can add 5G secure roaming, which allows every country force to have their own security, own authentication, own kind of sovereign independence as far as how they manage the users on the network, but then using that construct to actually fuse them together. So that's one of the issues we come to is we can bring our own devices into the construct, connect them all together. But more importantly, we tie in tactical radios. We're using interfaces in 5G that commercial industry uses for Wi-Fi to offload connectivity off to the unlicensed bands. Well, that interface is really flexible, so we've tied in tactical radios to that. So now depending on the risk factor or the operational stance that we want to have when we deploy, we can tie together within the areas where using 5G is safe and secure. But then as we go into more contested and congested environments, we can switch that off to our tactical systems. So it's a really flexible architecture and using that kind of software-defined nature of 5G in order to bridge these systems together. We've
Yeah, I think
experimented.
that, if I may, I think that flexible architecture of the 5G fabric really allows some of that capability to sort of snap in these other technologies and allow that interoperable communication, which is great. Let me go over to the Navy, if I may. And Jason, I know that you all are on a tear over there to roll out 5G across your bases and onto your ships, et cetera. Give us an update, state of the state, what's happening at Navy?
Yeah, we have a really wide swath of responsibility. Department of the Navy includes the Navy and the Marine Corps. So along with that, a couple highlights on what we have going on. Mr. Finelli, our CTO of the Navy, recently signed out a memo identifying priority technology areas for the department. And 5G and Future G is included by name in that. So we appreciate the senior leadership focus on 5G and Future G technologies. Our Spiral 4 acquisition contract issued by the Naval Supply Systems Command has been saving the entire Department of Defense significant amounts of money, especially in the sense that we're having a greater awareness of our lines of service that we're buying for cellular services and making sure that we're turning off things that are no longer used. The Spiral 4 contract has been great, and it's available to everybody in the federal government to leverage. As you mentioned, we're pushing 5G out to our Navy and Marine Corps installations. It's something that Congress and the administration and DoD have called us to do. The Navy Installation Command is leading the way there, executing contracts for towers leveraging MOCN technology, multi-operator core network technology, where the tower and the equipment can be put in and then multiple carriers can participate in that tower, keeping us from having to deploy multiple towers, speeding up schedules, reducing the cost for the carriers to do their deployments. We're pretty excited about that rollout. And then the other main thing that's affecting the Department of the Navy right now and all of DoD is the elimination of our TDM telephone services, something that DoD has depended on for a very long time. With the turn down of that service, there's been a renewed focus on 5G and what can we move from classic TDM to cellular capabilities. So that's providing some new focus on cellular coverage for our installations and accelerating those efforts.
You're definitely going back old school with the TDM, and what a superior technology to roll in this 5G. Amanda, who better, a decade plus at the DoD, now a couple of years, I think, over there, leading this fund. And who better to do that than you? I'm really excited about learning and understanding sort of where you are with this overall very important effort.
Yeah, well, good morning or good afternoon, Luke. Thank you very much for having me on the panel today. So at NTIA, I'm overseeing the Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund. This is a congressionally mandated initiative to try to drive open and interoperable wireless networks, trying to drive 5G towards open and interoperable wireless networks. We have a fairly significant amount of funding that we are trying to leverage to ensure that there is commercial adoption of these open and interoperable networks. So really trying to take a look at the big picture at NTIA to determine an overall strategy, right? So how could we leverage the amount of funding that we have to really try to drive an ecosystem or commercial ecosystem that has something that isn't broken, right? So 5G as it stands today largely works for the carriers. We at the US government are trying to drive supply chain resiliency, trying to inject potentially US providers of equipment into the 5G architecture. So the thought is really trying to use the innovation funds to get after demonstrating the capability that open and interoperable can provide to the commercial ecosystem in hopes of driving that adoption. So, as we thought about the problem, while $1.5 billion is a significant amount of money, to I think the commercial world, it's really somewhat insignificant, right? So, how can we be as strategic as we possibly can about shaping where those funds go? We've had a really good time, I think, at NTIA shaping that. And initially, we've gone out. Injecting money into what we call test and evaluation laboratories. And these laboratories are meant to be resources for the telecommunications ecosystem. So we've got 3 stood up, sort of a varying degrees of capability in each of the laboratories. And the thought is, companies that are new into this space, they might not be as big as a Nokia. They're smaller entities. They don't necessarily have the resources that some of those large companies do. So these laboratories are set up with our government funding where companies can go in and test their equipment. They can verify things like interoperability, performance, efficiency, security, and really be a resource. So we set these up with the thought that our government funding is standing them up, allowing them to operate for a number of years, with the goal that after our funding runs out, they're able to continue, right? So we want them to continue to be a resource, albeit folks will have to pay for it, but hopefully, it's up and running and it's a well-oiled machine a couple years down the line. So, our thought was really setting that up first as that foundational resource for the ecosystem, and then looking at where we can inject the dollars to have the biggest impact. So a little over a year ago, we went out with our second opportunity where we were focused on addressing the hardware aspects for 5G. So specifically radio units. There's really not too many US manufacturers of radio units right now for that 5G ecosystem. So we're looking, or we have invested in a variety of different companies to really try to drive the commercialization of those open and interoperable radio units. And we've asked, we've made awards, we've got some money at work right now. And I think the unique thing that we really focused on with that was requiring these companies to partner with mobile network operators. So the goal is having them go through their really applied research, hardware development efforts with a goal towards actually delivering a radio unit that is ready for commercial deployment, or as ready as we can possibly make it. And really trying to drive that commercial adoption of open and interoperable, really trying to increase that supply chain diversity, and trying to get US companies back into the ecosystem.
Love the strategic placement of those funds to really supersize some of these capabilities. So appreciate everything that you all are doing over there. Brian, how about at Verizon Business? I know you all are on a tear. You've absolutely got a massive footprint of 5G. Give us an update as to where you all stand.
So thanks again, Luke, for this opportunity. And yes, we are on a massive expansion right now. So to kind of the lay of the land of where we are, over the last couple of years, we've actually expanded our 5G network as we've moved our infrastructure from a non-standalone core to a standalone core, which is a huge monumental shift here in terms of 5G. And as I listen to the other panelists, it's nice to know there's a common theme that we're all working on. So I just listened to Amanda Verizon, as well as a couple of our MNOs, are participating in one of those labs in particular, and actually produced a couple of reports already, which we're very excited. For us to have diversity in our supply chain, it's in our best economic interest as well. So we're excited for that. I heard a little bit about TDM and the Navy as I'm down here in Norfolk. I met with the Navy yesterday. We're a huge 5G expansion down here in Eastern Command and 5G. TDM services are going away. But we see huge growth in fixed wireless access and 5G, right? I would say some of the things I've seen here most recently with the new administration that started beginning of the year. We started this over the last 18 months, but really ramped up here in the last 6 months is when RTO returned to office. We saw a huge influx of individuals going back to the office, and we'd see things like, well, majority of my communications is all from the mobile device. Now I'm in an office where I have no cellular coverage, right? In a lot of cases, that's by design, right? So as you get into GSA, LEED certified buildings, or depending on the agency's mission and countermeasures, he or she can't use their mobile phone. So we're seeing huge growth in things like neutral host networks, actually more indoor installations, working with the agencies. As Dr. Tom Rondeau was mentioning, yes, we are looking at 6G and have already started the planning for that, as well as how do we leverage international operations for us. We're very excited. We just announced last week that we actually, in partnership actually with Mike Loomis's firm, Nokia, expansion of our port projects. We actually just launched 6 new ports that will be deploying private wireless networks overseas in the UK, building off of what we've already done there today. And then I would say, as we go in the future here, I am very bullish for the next 10 years. Every year, I've been just celebrating my 25th year here at Verizon. Every year, it's like, all right, how far can we go? How high can we go? And when I look at the roadmap for the next 10 years, I'm very bullish, and these are reasons why. 4G will still be here, but we're going through a transition. We're now seeing, as it was mentioned before, contracts are now having the capabilities of 5G service plans. That's a huge shift. Spiral 4 was the last major one there in particular. As Amanda mentioned, the supply chain, we're starting to see as the chipset cost comes down and the module, you're seeing more 5G and more industrial IoT devices and new technologies like RedCap coming on board, right? So, and then, you start factoring in the other buzzwords of artificial intelligence, right? As the networks actually gotten flatter and more integration, and we're very excited, we launched something called network slicing on our frontline public sector roadmap. It really ties into the applications and actually giving network attributes or capabilities to specific applications or users, right? That's a fundamental shift. And we started first with public sector agencies, and we've done some excessive testing with companies like Axon. That's one of the providers of body-worn camera, testing the application, not just on speed, but more importantly on latency, right? And integration into the application, because you're starting to see these app developers or device manufacturers transition, which it just did from 3G to 4G, now are migrating over to 5G because the chipset costs are coming down, the networks are more pervasive, and new capabilities in network slicing. So when you start going and transmitting video from 1080p and you want to go to 4K to 8K, right? You're going to need more bandwidth, you need lower latency, right? So we're very excited. We're finally seeing everything come together with the backdrop of the pandemic. And it's not just from coverage, but you see people using the devices more in more places than ever before. Our network growth or consumption is only increasing, it is not decreasing. And then you start seeing new technologies like RedCap and other buzzwords that never went away, but IoT has been a huge resurgence that we see. And then working with our federal partners, if it is NTIA, supply chain, as well as the DoD and what we do today in terms of providing 5G coverage, both inside the fence line and outside the fence line to serve those military installations that we work, and it's mandated by Congress. So very bullish for the next 10 years in terms of mobility for us.
Looking forward to that, and I know there's an absolute need out there to do that as well. All right, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about 5G strategies in the federal service. We're going to roll over to Mike at Nokia. Mike, give us a top line state of the state. You all are a radio provider, device provider, and you're way bigger than that. Talk to us about the state of the state from your perspective.
Yeah, thank you very much. As you said, we're a technology provider, and we look to provide a capability that folks like Jason and Tom and Brian and Amanda can consume. We've been very, very busy in 2025 for a number of reasons. One of the areas that we highlight, we have a big focus on in Nokia Federal Solutions is tactical radios. And we had a couple of big milestones this year. First is we went general availability with our 5G tactical radio, the BXR. And in addition to being 5G, we added capability of band and power flexibility to the tactical radio portfolio that we acquired with the Phoenix Group last year. Additionally, in the tactical domain, we made a great announcement in Mobile World Congress with partnering with Lockheed Martin and Verizon with Brian's firm around the development of 5G.mil, which will encompass technology investments into the tactical space. Another big focus area that won't be as visible this year is O-RAN, and we were the recipient of the Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund grant, and we've put that money to good use, and we're investing in an O-RAN RU being developed at our Texas facility. And while that won't yield results in 2026 because that's a very, very long lead time program, rest assured the folks in Texas are very busy developing that radio, and we hope to complement that with our O-RAN baseband unit to make this a commercially viable technology. So thank you to the NTIA. Two other focus areas for us this year in terms of capability development around dynamic spectrum sharing. We've got a bunch of capability that we're adding on to the capability that we brought to the Hill Air Force Base project in Tranche 1 of the 5G funding. And then another focus area for us is integrated sensing and communications. We did a demo at Mobile World Congress in 2024 of a millimeter wave variant, very early prototype, and we're investing this year to provide a capability, hopefully by the end of the year in mid-band, that we may be able to demonstrate.
Sounds fantastic, and I appreciate you pointing out the leveraging of the fund. Speaking of which, Amanda, it sounds like you're making some very powerful strategic investments there. Want to highlight one that you want to sort of illuminate for the listening audience?
Yeah, well, thanks, Luke. Well, I appreciate Mike mentioning the award that he got. So he is one of 8 companies that received investments from the Innovation Fund. So the way we structured the radio unit investments was a lot of the funding going towards the effort of commercialization. So 8 different awards to 8 different companies. You've got folks like Nokia, and then you've got smaller companies. We've got an investment in a small entity called Abside, where a US company. I think it's a potentially really great technology. They've got some M&O partnerships, and they're on the path to deliver commercially ready radios in that 26 timeframe. Well, Mike mentioned, they have some long lead times. I'm hoping 26 is approaching here pretty quickly. So just about a year's time, we're hoping to really see the delivery of those radio units. And really excited about the mobile network operators and their willingness to work with those folks that they've signed up to be partners with. The AT&T Verizon lab that Brian mentioned that we stood up, that is being used by these companies, right? So we've got those radio unit vendors coming in to leverage those assets and hopefully doing a lot of the heavy lifting for folks like Verizon to get through sort of all the kinks of integration and how you might take this third-party radio and actually put it onto their existing infrastructure. So I'm really excited about, I'm hopeful about the successes that we see there. I think there are some smaller companies that I've got a big hopes for. We've got the ABSI, we've got a company called Aridin as well, doing some unique radio unit designs. And really looking forward to what they're able to do, and hopefully we can get them to scale and really show the value that open and interoperable can provide, and really trying to drive that supply chain diversity so that there are choices and that, hopefully there are US choices in that ecosystem for folks to buy from.
Amen on the US choices. So we certainly do appreciate that as well. Brian, you threw out a lot of stuff there, the bullish on 5G and bullish on the future. I'm sure you have a juicy example that you'd like to highlight in regards to maybe a capability where somebody's really using 5G on steroids.
Yeah, I would say what we see, and we're starting to see this in the federal government, and we're starting to see this in state and local as well. It's probably the pervasiveness of private wireless networks, right? So the ability to actually work with our partners like Nokia and others to actually build a purpose-built network, meaning providing the core, the radios that Amanda mentioned, on site to the configuration of the particular agency or corporation, right? And as I mentioned before, we're seeing tremendous success in ports, right? Which has a lot of applicability to the Navy, as well as the Coast Guard, as well as other large military installations, as well as civilian agencies as well, where you actually build depending on where you want particular coverage or the particular use cases that you have, you need access to, if you will. And we saw this spurred a little bit on the tranche side, right? As Mike mentioned on some of the examples there, we participated in some of those. But now as that migration from R&D, it's now operational, where do we start seeing it? So the ports is actually a pretty good example. And we actually won an award from the Gartner report in the Magic Quadrant on our work on private wireless networks. And we're starting to see that. I would say, as I mentioned in my earlier statement, where I see some applicability similar to a private wireless network is a neutral host networks, where we're actually Verizon goes in, builds out coverage in a particular facility or facilities, and not only broadcast Verizon's signal, but we can also broadcast other signals from the other carriers as well as a private network, right? And when you start seeing this, we're starting to see agencies as well as corporations, if you will, start to reevaluate and maybe decommission a network, for instance, right? So maybe they're running a land mobile radio network, and they have a land mobile radio network, they have a Wi-Fi network, and then they have a cellular network and a private wireless cellular network. What can we do here? And we're starting to see actually another one here in the United States, right outside Norfolk, across from the Navy, is a Virginia International Terminal, which is another private wireless network customer of ours, where they're actually starting to evaluate, and haven't done it yet, but did they decommission LMR and go to things like PTT over cellular, push to talk over cellular, right? And leverage that network, because now having coverage and not only broadcasting a private wireless network signal, you're also broadcasting commercial signal as well, which gives a lot of capabilities, not only to the port itself, but also all of their suppliers and shippers that actually use those same networks, right? So you start to get economies of scale than ever before. And what I always tell people when they ask about private wireless networks, the easiest way to describe it is, how do you deliver the most amount of bandwidth with the least amount of infrastructure? That's it. And when you look at an environment like a port where you can't necessarily tear up the asphalt, there might not be fiber, or we're working with certain military or other civilian agencies where you don't want to dig up the ground, if you will, for various reasons. How do you actually get that signal in far and wide, and also the capacity for autonomous vehicles? And we're not just talking about drones, we're talking about vehicles on the ground. So that's where I would say we see very exciting, and we've actually been recognized by industry partners as well as third parties on our work on private wireless networks.
Tremendous amount of use cases there, and we really appreciate you highlighting those for us. Tom, how about we talk about future G? You all are always sort of 2 steps ahead, if you will. But I know there's a lot of action still going on with just 5G and some of the exploitation of those capabilities. You want to highlight one?
Yeah, so one of the great things about these networks is when you make them open, interoperable, allow the interfaces to, to grow beyond the original use case. You got to have a use case to drive the development and the implementation, the execution of a network. But with these types of networks, the use cases grow once people figure out that they're there and available. So one of the things we've been working closely with is with the Navy on Naval Air Station at Whidbey Island. We've been putting in kind of the flight line of the future. So how do you cover the flight lines and how do you use 5G as a way to move information around those flight lines to improve operations there? That's been a great success. We've done that with an ORAN implementation out there. As soon as that was available, the users of that network started to find other uses for it. So innovation happens once you have these systems down there. So that's expanding, and where we keep getting support from the Navy and from Congress to continue to fund the rollout, the growth of that network in order to enable these different use cases. So instead of just flight line of the future, we're also doing base protection, and how do you actually do range comms as well as integration of sensors so that we can actually have better eyes and ears around our critical infrastructure. So that's one. The second one that we're excited about is down at Fort Bliss with the Army, executing another ORAN implementation of a network down there. Again, kind of covering the base, which is a large Army facility down in Texas. And that's going to give us better access to information to the soldiers, their families, the civilians that work there. So we're providing that kind of coverage there as moving towards integration into the public networks. But meanwhile, we're also making sure that we're looking at things like these X apps and R apps that are part of the future of these networks, as far as being able to tailor them for various purposes. So now we get to explore how to use that construct within 5G and in future G as a way to create new Army capabilities, new concepts of operation for how these networks meet military needs and military operational utility. So we've got a handful of these projects going on across the services, and we're really excited to see how the services have begun to adopt these ideas themselves, run forward with them. We were kind of the vanguard in a lot of this stuff, but they've all identified the utility of this and have been running pretty wildly with it since then. And you heard from Jason as far as what the Navy's doing. So a lot of great work across all the services across the entire department that we're seeing coming from the initial implementation of these networks.
Right. I love the idea of you lay down that capability and then they pile on all these use cases that weren't even thought about when you first put it down. So that's super promising to hear. Mike, how about at Nokia? Let's talk about let's crack open the door and expose some of these capabilities. And maybe you want to highlight one or two in regards to what you're doing there as far as providing those capabilities to the federal service.
Yeah, I'd love to highlight one. We made a public announcement with the Marine Corps Tactical Systems Support Activity, or MCTSA, in May. It's work that we've been doing with those guys for a very long time. And I think I'd just like to build on what Brian said and what Tom had said. It really is all about the use case, and it takes time to develop that, understand how to use the equipment, how to integrate it in properly, and then you can really launch from there. The second the capability's in place, it gives people an opportunity to innovate and build applications on top of the infrastructure. We started, I can go into a little bit of detail on this one because it's public. So a lot of the work we do, we're not at the liberty to say. It's up to the customer to speak to it. But this particular one is public, so we're excited about it. And we started with a POC with the Marine Corps at Air Station Yuma, kind of proved in the capability of our Banshee tactical radios. It worked as we said it worked, and they invited us to Project Convergence. It worked again in that environment under the conditions and the test cases that we laid out in Project Convergence. And then we were able to work funding with the Defense Innovation Unit to allow MCTSA to acquire some Banshee tactical radios, which is an integrated 3GPP cellular system with other tactical radios and TAC to kind of provide a broadband connectivity that integrates with traditional radios and also provides some situational awareness capability at the same time. And MCTSA is going to take those units and look at ways that those can support tactical activities in the Marine Corps mission. And so we're very, very excited about that opportunity. We see that as the beginning of a trend. We think that this capability is very compelling for the tactical environment.
And so many use cases that can be unlocked using these solutions. So we really do appreciate you doubling down there with those folks to provide that very important capability. Jason, speaking of use cases, so many to think of. You want to highlight one that you'd like to brag about and illuminate for our listening audience?
Yeah, I appreciate Tom mentioning the work at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, we're very thankful for a forward-leaning commanding officer and executive officer and units at Whidbey adopting advanced technology. The project that I'd like to highlight is the work being done by the Marine Corps at the Marine Air Ground Task Force Training Center, 29 Palms, California. And I apologize to your listeners who maybe had a reaction after having been deployed at 29 Palms. It's quite the place. 1,100 square miles in the Mojave Desert. 5G has been the perfect technology for providing wide coverage and high data rates at that training facility. The Marines do what the Marines do. They offered to take some gear from a closing out project, one of the tranche projects that Future G had, and they deployed that private network at 29 Palms to support live virtual constructive training. So this is augmented reality, virtual reality training, where they are now able to train more often, train at lower costs, train with units that aren't there at the training facility with them. They're able to bring them in from remote locations and really make some impactful improvements on their training capabilities. The Marines are looking at expanding that to other facilities and making that a deployable capability where they can now train with simulated live fire effects, airstrikes and the whatnot, in places that they typically wouldn't be able to train because they wouldn't be able to do actual live fire training. So, hat tip to the Marine Corps for adopting that technology and pushing forward.
And it's such a powerful technology that you can unlock these capabilities for these various types of use cases. It's fascinating just to listen to it. All right, we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. Welcome back to the Federal Executive Forum on Federal News Network. We are talking about 5G across the federal service. We are talking about priorities at this point. I'm going to start with you, Tom. Number one priority for you in the Future G space this year?
Yeah, number one. So yeah, how do you choose your favorite child?
Right on.
I think the biggest area that we're looking into that's kind of captured the 6G movement that's happening right now is this concept of integrated sensing and communications. So ISAC, as we call it. So this is turning our networks into sensors. I mentioned before about kind of a critical infrastructure protection around Whidbey Island and kind of expanding the networks to actually provide, these eyes and ears. How do you connect in sensors, but how do you use the network as a sensor itself? It's a really exciting concept. We're all interested right now in the counter drone space. So watching all of the rapid developments of drone warfare, how do we make sure we're utilizing as much advanced technology as we can to protect the homeland, protect our own critical infrastructure, and the fewer devices that you have to deploy and the fewer communication and systems you have to network together in order to provide that. Well, if you can dual purpose your networks for other reasons like sensing, it's a huge advantage for us. So we just launched we had our inaugural ISAC Strategy Summit that was U.S. industry, the Defense Department, the interagency across the United States, as well as some key allies and partners that we brought in to think about how can we make sure that we're investing in the right technologies, the right motivation for industry to run forward with this technology, because I think it's a mix of radios, of spectrum, the networks, artificial intelligence, microelectronics. All these are coming together in order to provide this this new idea of sensing. And the main use case that we've identified for this is that counter drone concept, because it is a kind of a perfect match of the density of these networks and the availability of spectrum and signaling in order to use them to detect where things are, what's happening, identify drones versus people and vehicles and birds and things like that. So we are running hard with pulling together our resources to provide some funding in the near future for how we're going to scale this out in a way that's going to prove it, help offset the investments that are required in order to make a scalable sensor network in the near future. One of the other aspects of this that I want to bring up, though, is since this is a commercialized global technology, it also provides significant threats to DoD operations. And so the other aspect of it, not just how do we use Isaac for our own purposes, but how do we make sure that we understand what our adversaries might be able to do with this technology versus U.S. operations. So there's an offensive and a defensive posture that we've got to take. So it's a really, really exciting scalable problem set that we're going after. So it's going to take a lot of investment. It's going to take a lot of work across the U.S. government, working with our commercial industry in order to make this happen. But it's right for U.S. innovation and right for U.S. leadership.
A super fabric that must be hardened. So we really appreciate that, Mike. How about at Nokia? Top priority for you all in your focus this year?
I'd say our top priority is developing the use case for tactical 5G private wireless, and developing the portfolio supporting those use cases. I just want to do a quick shout out, though, to Tom, because Isaac is like a close second. So there's a lot of focus going on with us there, because we believe it also has an applicability in that tactical environment, as well as other, all three lines of effort, to be honest with you, that DoD CIO has laid out. It has applicability to. But in the near term, and where we've got our resources focused there, is getting in with the end user, understanding the ConOps for the use of 5G in a tactical environment. We see tremendous promise of, as you talk about drone warfare and the ability to collect ISR data, distribute it to the right folks in a timely manner, get the right information to the right person on time very quickly. 5G has a role to play there, and but it's not a simple thing to just integrate that in. And so our focus is get with the end users, get into trials, understand how this technology needs to be integrated, improved, and will be used, and develop that use case so that we can get the technology and equipment right so that DoD can consume it.
Absolutely. We appreciate that. Amanda, you placed a lot of strategic investments. Top priority for you in this year?
Yeah, well, I might break the rules, and I think I have two. But the first one I'll mention is a focus on security and resiliency. So all of the things that have been talked about, Tom, Mike, Brian, and Jason, the security of the network, where we're using commercial networks, ensuring that those networks indeed are secure, not just obviously for the commercial aspect, but definitely for the DoD needs. So, some of the investments that I'm working within our portfolio at NTIA are looking at specifically the security of open and interoperable networks. So how do we, one, detect potential vulnerabilities in those networks, those potentially have more attack planes because they're open, but I also kind of see it as an opportunity to inject security more easily, and more easily being able to identify when security issues arise because it is open, right? You hopefully have a more virtualized network so that you have an easier time to address those things and do so in a more rapid fashion. So that security, that resiliency, and that automation, right? Being able to do that in an automated fashion is going to be really important as you think about the cycles as to how those vulnerabilities arise. It's not sort of in a hardware cycle. It's definitely more rapid. And how can we align these networks to be able to inject patches or whatever security fixes we might need in a more rapid fashion? So a lot of that security, potentially bringing in the buzzword of AI, but really how can networks leverage AI to do those types of security features that are so necessary? We definitely have smaller investments there, but I am excited to see how some of the university efforts out of Northeastern as well as Virginia Tech, we've got some awards, and then Booz Allen Hamilton is doing some work for us as part of the portfolio as well, really focusing on anomaly detection in the networks. So excited about that. And then the last one I'll mention, which I talked about before, is really driving that commercialization piece. So obviously we've got investments in radio units, but trying to achieve the overall objective that the Innovation Fund is set out to accomplish is driving commercial adoption of open and interoperable, and making sure that the investments that we've made are adopted, hopefully not just across the government, but in commercial networks, and really providing that opportunity for our investments to be successful and to be adopted commercially.
Well, it sounds like it's well on its way, and we really appreciate all the efforts there. Brian, top priority for Verizon Business this year?
I would say, as you heard from all the great panelists today, our top priority is speed of adoption, right? The coverage is there, the networks are there, the contracts are now available, the rate plans and everything else. And you heard some great use cases that you can do adoption, right? That is probably our biggest point right there. We're continuing working with the Innovation Fund and all the future G work, as well as we get into tactical and DoD. That effort will continue and morph as that technology and that roadmap gets developed. But I think what gets overlooked in a lot of cases, you could adopt this technology now. You heard about TDM transition, right? I think in what my job is, and working with my solution architect teams here, there's a misnomer, if you will, in the marketplace that individuals in federal, both DoD and civilian, don't know that they can take advantage of this technology, right? That security allows them to do so, right? That's probably one of the biggest misnomers right now, that people are afraid or don't even know that they're able to do this, right? And as you all heard, it's really those use cases that really generate a return on investment, right? To actually adopt this technology. How are you going to meet the mission's needs with the same, or if not less, resources, right? This technology is a great way to do that. And it's probably our biggest priority right now is actually speed of adoption of this technology for many use cases that can be developed and used now.
I love the concept of laying down this architecture in a flight line. All of a sudden, you're piling on all these other unknown and unplanned use cases. I think that's fantastic. Jason, a lot of activity going on over there at the Navy. What's at the top of the job jar as far as priority for this year?
Yeah. For us, a focus on enterprise. We recently did an inventory across the Department of the Navy and identified dozens upon dozens of 5G projects going on in many different levels of technology, many different domains, many different application areas. But how do we take those individual pilots and experiments? How do we take the fantastic work at Naval Air Station Whidbey Island and bring it to Naval Air Station Oceana in Virginia? How do we bring it to Marine Corps Air Station Miramar in San Diego, California? How do we scale these capabilities and these use cases out across our entire $250 billion a year enterprise? How do we take the work the Marine Corps is doing with the Banshee tactical radio and scale that out across all of our units? And how do we take that into the special operations communities? So that enterprise focus is where much of my attention is this year.
Enterprise, very important. All right, we're going to wrap it up here. We always like to end with a little peek into the future. Mike, we're going to start with you. 3 years from now, we crack open the door to the R&D lab over there. And what are we looking at 2 to 3 years from now in regards to Nokia Federal?
One of the things I'd hope to see is, again, I'm winding back to my previous life as an Army officer. We always wanted to operate in the field, operate in garrison as closely as we could. We would operate in the field, have a minimum transition as possible. And one of the things that I think 5G has the promise is if we see 5G deployments on bases and we see the adoption of tactical 5G, today there's different network capability, application access, compute capability in garrison as to deployment. And one of the visions that I would love to see is an ability for 5G to be adopted on military installations, 5G to be adopted in a tactical environment in a secure way, such that that transition from a network and application capability is completely seamless from garrison activities into the field. And we want to bring the technology to enable that vision. And I hope that it's beginning to be realized in 3 years.
Fantastic. We look forward to that. I have good confidence that it will be. Brian,
Just building off
3
the
years
last,
from now, let's paint a picture of that future.
I mean, 3 years from now, 36 months, I hope to hear that we have a lot more use cases with 5G and greater adoption, as I mentioned in the last question, right? We talk about this, but I think the proof is in the pudding. Let's
Will
see.
it be table stakes?
I mean, right now, we still have a very underpenetrated market in terms of 5G. I mean, it is really underpenetrated. And I think in some cases, people are stuck and afraid. And, it's low risk, but you got to move, right? This innovation doesn't stop. And that's probably what I hope for in the next 3 years is that we see greater adoption. And then ultimately, we actually have, when you have greater adoption, you leverage the infrastructure, it drives more innovation. What else could you possibly do? And it actually fuels more R&D, more innovation, and it actually helps Amanda and Tom to do what they want to do. Because if you're not adopting what they've already did 3 years ago today, it's hard for them to actually get the monies to actually do more innovation, right? Not everything's going to be a hit, but there are definitely things that agencies, both federal and civilian, I mean, DoD and civilian can actually do today with 5G that would be mind-boggling. And for some reason, they are scared to adopt it. And that's our job, to actually educate them, lead them through the process, and actually ultimately give them a great ROI on their investment.
Really appreciate that. Amanda, you've placed dozens of micro investments there. 3 years from now, what's the expectation? Where are we going to be 3 years from now in regards to the fund?
Yeah, I hope we can look back and say that the investments were impactful and that, we've had results in the commercial ecosystem. We've seen from even before funds got distributed, there were moves with U.S. mobile network operators towards open and interoperable. AT&T publicly stating, they're going to make their network Open RAN ready. Verizon, bringing in new radio units into their network and really leaning forward to do that and working with the fund. I hope that those successes continue. Another big outcome is really just bringing, as cliche as it might sound, bringing the ecosystem together, right? So bringing sort of new, smaller players that are focused on the private network or private enterprise or private use case deployments, bringing them together with a variety of customers or different entities, demonstrating what's in the realm of possible. I hope that continues, and I think that the Innovation Fund has been impactful to try and shape that. My real vision, I think, for the future, and I don't know if it'll be in the next 2 to 3 years, but that focus on automation and doing so by leveraging AI. And I know it seems to be a buzzword, but we've had the AI action plan come out from the White House. How can the government and how can the telecommunications infrastructure leverage AI? How can it be integrated? And how can we as a country really lean forward and leverage the expertise that we have to really make the mobile network that much more capable than what it is, right? I think, the pieces are slowly coming together. But I'm very excited to see how that integration happens and how some of our investments are able to sort of drive the virtualization pieces. So getting towards that automation, getting to where AI tools and capabilities and use cases can be more easily integrated. So, I'm very hopeful that in 2 to 3 years, I don't know what it will be, 5G plus, 6G, whatever it's going to be called, but really working towards a shift in how that network architecture is, and how AI and automation really plays a key role in everything we do on our devices and IoT and private networks.
Undoubtedly, these investments, well, they have paid off and they will continue to pay off. And so we really appreciate that and your focus on leading those efforts. Jason, you're on a tear with the enterprise play. Perhaps 3 years from now, you'll be well on your way there. But if you look around the Navy, what's it going to look like in respect to 5G 3 years from now?
Yeah, and for me, the excitement here is not necessarily having a bigger pile of 5G. My excitement is for mobility, the mobility that any wireless communications unlocks for the department. My bumper sticker is mobile warfighters, mobile workforce, making sure our warfighters and our workforce can communicate and work and fight from wherever they need to, whenever they need to. And I think 5G, 6G, we're only 5 years out from that, really. Wi-Fi, there's some great developments going on in Wi-Fi, non-terrestrial networks, PLEO constellations, all of this advanced technology that's coming in. What I'm looking forward in 3 years is those things working together seamlessly to unlock mobility for our warfighters and our workforce. Technology like software-defined networking, SD-WAN, orchestration is really going to help glue those things together in a way that they don't have to think about it anymore. It's not about changing SIM cards or changing from cellular to Wi-Fi. It's having all of these things work together in a seamless way so they can focus on mission.
Really appreciate that. And we look forward to seeing that capability across the Navy. And who better to wrap up this segment than Dr. Rondeau? Future G, 2 to 3 years from now, what can you expect to see? What will you all be focusing on at that point in time? What's the ecosystem going to look like at that point?
Yeah, so I always think about the privilege of being in a research and engineering focus that I've had my entire career is to think about, not what the future could look like, but to invent the future that we want to see. If I'm to borrow from the motto of my alma mater, Virginia Tech. So one of those things, keep on that buzzword that Amanda's brought up, AI, right? So the artificial intelligence radio access network, AI RAN. That's a big focus of kind of transitioning from just Open RAN, which is a necessary base for that to launch from, is to create this AI RAN. And so we're working with the AI RAN Alliance that's been stood up fairly recently. We've been working with, if you've seen the announcements from NVIDIA on their AI Win project, which is to advance US technology innovation into an AI-focused RAN system. That's the future that we're investing in and pushing forward. And one of the things, the other buzzwords that I think that we heard a lot today are open and interoperable. And so how do you make sure that we're providing that openness, that interoperability. And so that's going to help us create the innovation space to take advantage of all these new AI ideas that are being put into these future networks. So on that one, we've launched the Okudu project, which is this open source software platform for 6G. And how do we make sure that we're creating that space of openness and innovation? So when we saw what Linux did for creating access to the internet and to creating the web as we know it today, when Kubernetes came out, it helped us control and orchestrate across the cloud. Those are major open source efforts, and we're trying to do the same thing for the telecommunications world. So that has been, that was announced earlier this year. We are in the process of getting those contracts signed and under agreement. By the end of September, we should be able to announce the plan for executing on Okudu and pushing that forward as a platform for us to create that space of innovation. So now you can take more shots on goal because the barrier to entry of creating a new technology and integrating it into a system becomes much easier, lower barrier of entry and activation energy to do that. So kind of combining those, looking towards the future as far as how do we rapidly create opportunities for US innovation that can be tailored to different problems, different platforms, obviously focusing on the Defense Department's needs of creating these capabilities for military advantage in the field. That's what we're looking at, and the future that we see is based on this as combining high-end advanced AI computation within the network, so that you have a seamless access to the applications, to the compute power, and wrangle all this stuff together in order to build that innovation and to invent that future.
Openness and interoperability, the name of the game that really unlocks these use cases. So we really appreciate all of you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us for this program. I'd like to thank all the sponsors for supporting us on this show. I'd like to thank the good people here at Federal News Network that make our program so successful and enjoyable. And most of all, I'd like to thank the listening audience out there that tune in every month. You've been listening to the Federal Executive Forum, part of the Federal News Network.